Yep, we're still on GX, and I was gonna take a break from it. I was gonna talk about other things, but the GX abyss has dragged me down and refuses to spit me out, and my head is just a jumble of Judai, Jaden, Neos's ass, get your game on, so on and so forth. So since that's the case, let's talk about Yubel. Before I go into anything about Yubel, I will just say that, like the majority of my GX videos, I will be talking about the subbed version. I need to state this outright because the dubbed version of GX changed Yubel's gender. Yubel is quite clearly androgynous, yet the dub turned them into a woman because an androgynous human turned demon isn't allowed to love Judai, I guess. Mind you, even the Crunchyroll sub got it wrong and kept referring to Yubel as a she, even though from all my rewatches I have never once heard Yubel refer to themselves as she. Even just writing this, I can hear the collective yells of "who cares" deafening me, and if it means anything, I care. And Yubel is objectively cooler this way anyway. You clicked on the video and I will now force you to stay here. Yubel is a really cool character. There's someone who existed in Judai's past life just to find him reincarnated hundreds of years later as a Japanese boy. Yu-Gi-Oh seems to really love their reincarnations, and in a sense Yubel is kind of a more fucked up Atem. And yes, I know season 0 is a thing that happened and Atem killed some people, but trust me, Yubel is definitely the edgier one here. Yubel is introduced to us as season 3's villain, but they aren't just a villain, they are the best villain of GX. Sartorius lovers, suck my nuts. When it comes to Yu-Gi-Oh villains, it's always hit or miss. The original Duel Monsters series is a testament to that, with it having Pegasus, now reformed, Marek, now reformed, and Thief King Bakura, now reformed. Oh wait, they just killed that last guy. Fuck him, I guess. They were all great villains, but then there was Darts. He didn't feel human. His actions were unreasonably stupid, and the whole season felt like a goofy spin-off in general. The Yu-Gi-Oh cast go to America? Whoa! GX, on the other hand, kind of had a problem of not having a solid villain. There wasn't really one throughout the entirety of season 1. They had the Shadow Riders, but they weren't around enough individually to really make an impact. Camula was probably the most memorable. Tanya as well, because she returned in season 3. Oh, and can't forget the Pharaoh that totally didn't have a thing for Judai.
だが、そなたも一緒に来ないか? Huh?
In fact, the villains in season 1 were so nothing that when the old man comes back in season 4, I found myself going, who the fuck is this guy? Season 2 is when GX actually started getting reasonable villains, but the villain was less Sartorius and more the Light of Destruction. In fact, it was the Light of Destruction, but GX ended up adding the Ultimate D plotline on top of the Neo Space plotline, and in turn things felt kind of half-baked with the amount of information the show was throwing at us. Seriously, there's a whole episode where Pegasus just sits there to deliver exposition and basically tells us the reason World War II happened was because of the Light of Destruction, which is really funny. It's for this reason Yubel was arguably the best antagonist GX got, not just because of their motivations and ideals, but because we didn't need an insufferable amount of lore thrown at us thanks to season 2 already doing that. And if I were to speak personally, Yubel was also just a good antagonist in general, not just in GX. As we all know, I'm very GX biased, so obviously it's unfair for me to say that, but Yubel felt they had one of the most twisted and interesting backstories among Yu-Gi-Oh villains. I mean, if you look at Pegasus and see why he did what he did in season 1 of Duel Monsters, it's because he was grieving over his lost wife, but he knew what he was doing to get her back was wrong. For season 2, we had Marek, whose motivations were fueled by vengeance for a man he'd never met, and because of that he could be reasoned with quite easily. Thief King Bakura for me was wasted potential, since they revealed it was actually Zork thirsting for bloodlust and darkness and not just Bakura himself, who had lost his entire village to create the Millennium items. And again, like I said, they just fucking kill this guy off with no happy ending. Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds was also pretty solid in their villains, and I'd say it had some of the best villain introductions and also villain motivations. Yubel though, their story is tragic because they believe what they're doing is right. They don't see the problem with death, or with hurting the one they deem to love, because they think that's how you love. How are you supposed to reason with someone who believes they know what's best for you? Judai couldn't do it because the angrier he got, the more Yubel thought he was showing his love for them. And if he showed no emotion towards them, they'd just hurt more people around him until he showed emotion. Yubel had become so twisted and torn that they only heard what they wanted to hear from Judai. And that kind of antagonist is a tough one to deal with. Yubel also seems to be a bit of a controversial character, considering the way they were dealt with. For that, you need to understand who Yubel is and what they went through. So let's begin. Yubel is the spirit of a monster card called, well, Yubel. They were Judai's favorite card when he was a kid and also acted as an overprotective spirit. Yu-Gi-Oh seems to really like that trope, it seems. The problem is Yubel was a bit too overprotective and sent anyone they determined to be dangerous for Judai into an unwaking coma. It wasn't only dangerous people actually, but anyone who just upset Judai in any way, including when he'd cry after losing duels. After Kuiper Corp did some meddling with Yubel's card, and yes, I'm pretty sure it was Kuiper Corp, they decided the best way to deal with Yubel was to shoot them into space. I don't know why this was the best idea they had, but I assume it's because Judai, who still was a kid at this point, didn't want Yubel torn or burned up. And considering Kuiper's had his own run-ins with demonic dual monster spirits more than once, I think he just didn't want to deal with it anymore. While in space, Yubel for some reason starts burning up, or they're just somehow in a lot of pain. I don't really know how, but The point is, Yubel's in so much pain that they reach out to Judai in his dreams, causing Judai to have awful nightmares which are actually visions, and his parents give him shock therapy to make him forget about Yubel completely. Let me just say real quick, fuck Judai's parents. Their son had no friends, had terrible nightmares, and they seem to just not want to deal with it, so fuck it, shock therapy. They were also never home either, and it's like no wonder this kid grew up so socially oblivious, he had no one to talk to. I hate Judai's parents. This is a Judai's parents hate video. Anyway, with Judai having completely forgotten about Yubel, which I assume severed his connection with them completely, Yubel couldn't reach out to Judai anymore. While in space, Yubel was in so much pain that they allowed themselves to be corrupted by the light of destruction, who told them Judai was hurting them because that's how he showed his love for them. For me, when seeing this scene, I don't believe it was only the light's influence, but Yubel wanting to believe it too. Yubel seems strong enough to be able to counter the light, considering they're the protector of the Supreme King, who's the literal King of Darkness, so I personally think Yubel let the light in to be able to cope with Judai's betrayal. I mean, it's very clear Yubel went through extreme heartbreak at having to separate with Judai, so what other way were they supposed to keep themselves sane, so to speak? Yubel eventually crashes back down to Earth, completely disfigured and near powerless from having to protect themselves from the crash. And this is where Professor Cobra finds them. From there, Yubel latches onto the darkness in his heart to trick Cobra into helping them, and after that, anyone Yubel interacts with is just another tool to get to Judai. Yubel's tools consisted of Amon Garam, one of the transfer students, Martin, a first-year student, and Johan Anderson. Yubel targeted Amon and Martin because of the darkness in their hearts, making them the perfect target for corruption. For Johan though, there's obviously more to it than the darkness of his heart, and it seems they somehow got into Johan's head just to rip him out and chuck him into Rainbow Dragon somehow. Yubel evicted him from his own goddamn body. Judai first actually sees Yubel when they leave Martin's body, and first seeing this reveal was almost as good as the possessed Johan reveal. Almost. It takes Judai a while, but he remembers Yubel eventually, and the complete pain and guilt on his face shows us he clearly did miss Yubel, probably even feels terrible for forgetting about them. Judai quickly puts his guard back up though, considering Yubel put all his friends at risk of getting hurt and kept throwing threats at Johan for simply interacting with Judai. This is because Yubel considers themselves the only person Judai needs in his life, and throughout his entire childhood, Yubel kind of was the only person Judai had in his life. But of course, that isn't the case anymore. After Yubel disappears along with Johan, Judai goes to the Hell Dimension in an attempt to find him. We discover everything happening in this terrible dimension is all part of Yubel's plan to draw the Supreme King out of Judai. Johan especially was a big part of that plan, and Yubel seems to use him to their advantage to piss Judai off more and more during their duel to lure the Supreme King out. But how did Yubel know Judai even had this Supreme King side to him? Well, when Judai gets Johan back and he moves on to his final duel with Yubel, we're shown an emotional scene of Judai's past life. In his past life, Judai existed as the Supreme King, and Yubel existed as his best friend. But I feel the term soulmate is more appropriate here. Yubel goes through a horrible transformation to protect past life Judai, and from how we see their human form tied down to a table while a bunch of scalpels cut into them, I think it's safe to say it was disgustingly painful. Judai from the past clearly doesn't want Yubel to go through with it, but eventually they become this demon dragon we know them as, and Judai pledges his eternal love to Yubel for the sacrifices they made for him. Now, here's the thing. I don't think this part of the season was written all that well. It's quite obvious they hinted at the Supreme King side of Judai since the discovery of him being the Gentle Darkness in Season 2. And Yubel was also foreshadowed since, I would say, Season 1. It was very, very brief, but you can certainly interpret it that way. Flame Wingman also looks very similar to Yubel, and with how Yubel used to be Judai's favorite card, I'm positive that it was done on purpose. So while the reincarnation thing felt way out of left field, if you really squint, you can see hints of there possibly being something more to Judai and who he is. What I think they needed to do was outright show scenes of past life Judai with Yubel during the beginning of Season 3. For example, that dream Judai had about his friends vanishing could have instead have been replaced with Judai in his past life. I think this would have worked very well, considering we had no idea this human was Yubel until being told their name. So if they just kept that a secret, it would have taken most viewers a while to connect the demon Yubel we know in the present to the human Yubel we see in the past. That way, it'd work as a great reveal and give us more insight to Yubel's relationship with Judai. I think this, well, sloppy writing is why so many people feel so conflicted at Season 3's resolution. The resolution being Judai deciding what happened to Yubel was his fault and fusing their souls together so they can finally be together forever. Looking at it on the surface, this decision seems somewhat abusive on Yubel's part, and to many seems like Judai only did it because it was the only way to save everyone and keep everyone safe. But there is far more to it than that. Yes, Judai was only a kid and had no control over what happened to Yubel when they were shot into space, but we need to remember Yubel was corrupted by the light of destruction. They weren't in a sound mindset at all when meeting Judai again, and I'm pretty sure Judai even says they aren't the Yubel he remembers. And now you're saying, but even before the light, Yubel was sending anyone who even looked at Judai into comas. That doesn't seem like something a sane person would do. Think about it from Yubel's perspective. This person mutilated and transformed themselves into a hideous beast because they wanted to protect Judai. And I think it's fair to say Yubel came from a time of war where multiple people were out for Judai's head. Imagine suddenly waking up thousands of years later with the person you vowed to protect, knowing nothing of the time you're currently in or how many years it's been, and seeing them dueling, which I'm pretty sure was hinted to be what warriors did during Yubel's time. You'd not only be on high alert because of the duels alone, but absolutely overbearing, considering the person you promised your life to has now appeared before you as a weak child. Everything Yubel did for Judai was absolutely out of love. And that's what makes Yubel not only terrifying but tragic. They genuinely believe they love Judai, and that Judai loves them, and the fact they'd rather believe the pain inflicted on them was out of love instead of hate is depressing. By the time the Season 3 duel comes to a conclusion, Judai understands this, and his fusing with Yubel was him showing he's finally accepted Yubel's love again. However, I do also think Yubel reminded Judai of himself. Considering Judai had just committed genocide, and now seeing Yubel hurt countless people for Judai's sake, Judai somewhat did the same thing for Johan. He realizes in this moment that he and Yubel both have a lot to learn and a lot to make up for, so it's better they do that together. I mean, before fusing with Yubel, Judai says he's leaving on a journey to grow from a child to an adult. Fusing with Yubel is Judai's most sound, mature decision he's made, and he admits he's not doing it to save everyone. He's doing it because he needs to grow up. and Yubel has helped him realize that. In fact, he and Yubel both need to grow up, and they'll learn everything they can together. It's interesting to me that Judai isn't making this decision to save everyone, which is something he's felt obligated to do since the beginning of GX. You can definitely interpret this decision he makes for himself and Yubel as being a selfish one, something he admits to, and is the last childish decision he makes before growing up. It's kind of beautiful to me, really, that this happens. You can call it manipulative on Yubel's part, or stupid on Judai's part, but even Yubel was surprised at Judai wanting to fuse together. In fact, they were so surprised they broke down in tears, promising Judai they'll fight the light together. The light, of course, being what made Yubel hurt Judai in the first place. So already they're regretting their past mistakes, and already Yubel is learning from the love Judai's given them. I think it's fitting that this happened, and it needed to be done for Judai's development. Season 4 I'm kind of upset about because Yubel isn't exactly around. Yeah, they exist in Judai, but we don't hear them speak often. We don't hear Yubel's voice come from Judai's mouth, we don't get their thoughts on any situation, all we get is Yubel's powers that Judai can now use. I mean, I like to think the only reason Judai spent all his time alone in the Red Dorm is because he was talking to Yubel and catching them up with everything they've missed, but that's all off-screen stuff. It would have been great to at least get Yubel's thoughts on Johan when he popped up, or have them interact in some way. It just seems like a lot of missed opportunities. But season 4 was rushed, so there's missed opportunity everywhere for it, and I'm still grateful we got what we did. It's just, you know, you can never go wrong with more Yubel. Anyway, what I'm trying to say with this video is there's a lot more to Yubel than just a cheesy villain. Yubel's plans were sick and twisted, as were their desires, and it made them unsettling overall. I mean, the way they used Johan's body to become Judai's best friend was disturbing in itself. Yubel even says they'd become both Johan and Yubel, and I have no doubt they did that because they wanted to feel Judai's love completely. It's a the more you think about it, the more creepy it is kind of thing. But I'm glad Yubel got a chance of redemption and took it, and them being part of Judai is just really cool for me because now Judai's this demon dragon thing who can shoot laser beams.
ありがとう、ユウギさん。よっしゃ、ユウギさんが一緒なら100人力だぜ。そうと決まれば。
It's one thing to have a villain, and it's another thing for that villain to become part of our protagonist forever. I just think it's neat. Thanks for watching. I hope this video helped you see Yubel in a different light, and if you already liked Yubel, I hope this video made you like them even more. There's a lot more to Yubel than meets the eye, and while their story wasn't particularly well written, it's still nice to connect the dots around their character. Also, just letting you all know, my videos probably won't be coming out as fast anymore because university has just started back up for me, but don't worry, I'll still be making them. Also, I now have a Twitch, so if you would like to join in and ask questions on my streams, feel free to do so. I'm currently streaming every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays are exclusive to Duel Links only, so feel free to jump in. See you in whatever I make next.
Kill. I would